And now we're going to have another session by Riot Games. We're going to have Leanne Loom, the director and head of Riot Forge at the company. And I believe we have Leanne right here with us.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. How are you
Hi.
today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. Where are you based, by the way?
I'm in LA, in Marina Del Rey.
Oh, nice. So you're pretty much where we are right now, right?
Yes.
Well, virtually. Thank you very much for joining us. And we are very excited to listen to your speech. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to talk a little bit about forging your own path and trying to stand out as a developer in the community that we're all in making games. The talk is short, so I'm just going to, really be concise as possible, focus on some key takeaways that might help you on your journey. But firstly, a little bit about me, just so I can give you some context. As mentioned, my name's Leanne Loom. I'm the head of Riot Forge, which is Riot Games' third-party publishing label. I have three clear passions in life. The first one is I'm a gamer, obviously, have been since I was a very small person. I also love cats. These are my two cats, Bailey and Cleo. And I also love everything to do with cars. So pretty big obsession with cars. I love Formula One, love everything to do with cars, and that's how I spend a bunch of my free time. So the contents of my talk today does come from a variety of companies that I've worked at, games that I've worked on, and different areas that I've been in within my career. So just wanted to give you some context of my journey and where I've been. So firstly, always loved games, as I mentioned, since I was very young. This is a game called Nebulous, which is, as you can see from the graphics, is quite old. Streets of Rage was really the first game that I super fell in love with, and realized that actually what I wanted to do with my life was make video games and bring that same joy to other people. So I went to university, started a video game degree at university, and then worked on games such as Risk and Scrabble and Magic the Gathering. And then I had the opportunity to move to Japan for a couple of years and work on the publishing side. And I worked on a variety of different games for a company called Satire, who are quite big in media, film, books, TV, games, and worked on games such as Monster Hunter. And then when I returned from Japan, I moved to Electronic Arts, and I was a senior producer on the Need for Speed franchise for many years. And as I mentioned, I love cars, so this was really a dream come true for me. Perfect match, cars and games, two of the best things in the world. So that was an amazing experience. But after, a handful of Need for Speeds, I definitely wanted something new and a different challenge, and have always loved League of Legends, and had the amazing opportunity to move here to LA, where I now work at Riot Games. And it really still blows my mind that, so many people play League every single month and bring so much joy to everybody's life. So as mentioned, I head up Riot Forge, which is Riot Games' third-party publishing division. We announced last year that we're working with a variety of external developers to make multiple League of Legends games. And these games are very different to what Riot is focused on with our internal games. It's outside of the MOBA genre, outside of competitive motivations for games. So really focus on bringing different experiences to our players. And we've already announced two of our games, the first one being Rune King with Airship Syndicate, and the second one being Convergence with Double Stallion. So every day I'm working with different developers, and we're looking for partners to work with. So taking some of those experiences and learnings on how Riot Forge approaches finding partners, and also, just trying to summarize those into some things that publishers like Riot Forge care about and might be looking for in developer partners. So the goal for today's talk is to just really give you all some ways to think about how you can stand out, especially when it comes to creating partnerships, getting investment, or working with publishers. It's important to note, though, that one size doesn't fit all. So I don't expect this to apply to all partnerships, and this isn't certainly what all publishers are looking for. It's just some things that I've seen and summarized, and the way that Forge looks for developers as well, and how to really stand out in front of all of the developers that are out there and really get the attention from publishers or investors, or whatever it is that you're looking for in your partnership. So this is just some key takeaways, and hopefully will help you in your development studio. So firstly, as we all know, there are many different types of collaborations, whether that's developer to publisher like Forge does, or whether that's a development studio to an investor, or even developer if it's a cross collaboration. And those collaborations could be an investment from a monetary perspective in your studio, or licensing of an IP, traditional work for hire, outsourcing, porting, all of those different ways that we can collaborate across our teams. For Riot Forge, we definitely focus on the League of Legends IP, and we are really looking to leverage experience and expertise from the developers that we work with, allowing them to fully own the creative of the game, the development of the game, and really looking for ways to reimagine the League of Legends IP into different experiences. So what we do on Riot Forge is a little bit of a mixture, actually. It's not a traditional work for hire. We don't have ideas already that we want built and go and find a developer. We're not kind of dictating which games our developers should make, but it's also not a full licensing deal, because we still maintain ownership of the League IP and fund the development. So for us, it's really about finding the best partner, and there's many different types of partnerships, and depending on where you want your studio to go and what your vision is, there are definitely many different ways that you can approach this. And once you've figured out what type of partnership you want to go for, then that's when you can really dig into how you actually stand out as a developer. So talking about standing out, I do feel like there are three main areas to focus on that could potentially help you when you're looking for new partnerships, especially when you're trying to differentiate yourself against all the other studios that are out there in the industry and set your studio up for success. This also applies to when you're kind of presenting your studio vision or your game pitch to your partners as well. So the first one is studio identity, really understanding what your studio stands for and what you're doing. Game quality and the products that you've made before and how that represents your studio. And lastly, your unique DNA and what sets you apart from the rest of the developers out there. And I'm going to dig into a little bit of each of these areas and explain why I believe they're important and what they mean. So for studio identity, so when a studio has a really clear identity with the way that they approach their development and the games that they create, it creates a really strong vision. And a really strong vision is something that is super important. Especially in partnerships. As a publisher, I definitely want to know that the developers that I'm working with have a clear vision. And in order to achieve this, just really think about how you see yourself as a studio. Are you work for hire? Are you outsourcing? Are you a porting studio? Do you want to work on your own original IPs or other people's IPs? Asking questions such as what's your specialty and why should people work with you? What is the focus of your experience? This is a really good way to think about long-term goals and your strategy and where you feel like your studio is heading and what does that look like from a holistic identity perspective. And when I think about studio identity, I really reflect on this book that I've read, which I highly recommend. It's an awesome book. It's called Essentialism by Greg McCowan. It's really interesting case study in there about a marketing ad agency. They were really struggling. They were doing a little bit of everything and they just weren't getting clients. So the CEO knew that one of the things that they were consistently great at was doing high quality presentations, extremely high quality polished presentations for their clients. And that was one of the many things that they did in their agency. So they went on an offsite and they went through their priority, their studio identity, and really tried to figure out of all of the clients they've had and the partnerships they had, what was the reoccurring successful thing that was at the root of all of those partnerships. And as a company, they decided to pivot and focus solely on offering presentations. really high quality presentations, because that's what they did really, really well. And as soon as they did that and leaned into their identity, leaned into the thing that they were great at, and created this really clear agency identity, the company went from struggling to thriving, because the clients knew where to go for that one specific thing and who was going to do it the best. And I feel like this can apply to game studios as well. You know, what's the game or the type of experience you are the best at making? It doesn't mean that you have to make the same game every time, by the way. It's just about having that core identity, which appears in everything that you make. So you can see the studio's DNA within your products. Next is game quality. So when we think about game quality and what we look for, this is really ensuring that the games that come out of your studio are the highest possible quality within your constraints. Obviously, you know, not everybody is making AAA games with multi-million-dollar budgets. So within the constraints that you have, making sure that you focus on quality within that budget and time and the people, and hitting the quality bar that you're setting for yourself in your studio. To be clear, this doesn't mean that you have to make 100 Metacritic game every time, because that's clearly not realistic. But there are, you know, many different layers to quality. And what's important is being able to show that you have hit the maximum quality bar that you can within those constraints. Also doesn't mean that your game has to sell millions and millions of units, but showing that you have value and quality and that you care about making a great game and how you've achieved that in your previous games is really important. Show the potential, show the consistency within the games that you've made. And lastly, the one that I feel is actually the most important, which I look for a lot when we're partnering with studios on Forge, is what I like to call unique DNA. And when I say DNA, I mean design, narrative, and art. And this kind of forms the sort of creative triangle of your games or of studios. And these are really some of the core creative elements that make up the games we make. And as a studio, it's really powerful to have something that's unique to you and help drive your studio identity, whether that's, you know, some gorgeous art style, whether that's a, you know, design mechanic that you've coined, or, you know, something really great that you've done in your narrative. I think as a studio, having something super unique can really help drive that unique studio identity that we were talking about before as well. So DNA and studio identity clearly go hand in hand. And this is just some examples of studios that have done this really well, you know, having super unique art style, like some of these games, really standout narrative like Gris, for example, or maybe it's something with the way that you tell your stories. You have great VO, or you have great character emotion and interaction like Haven. Can also come from the design, like I mentioned, like a mechanic you've coined or a certain system that you've put in your game that really helps stand out from other genres in that space. But having something, you know, in this kind of unique DNA really helps put a stamp on who you are as a studio and what you excel at, what your focus is. And if that's what a publisher is looking for, then you can fill that gap that the publisher, you know, sees an opportunity there. So don't be afraid to lean into your expertise to the area that, you know, your studio is really great at. So to summarize, these are the three key areas that I believe can help a studio stand out and get attention from a publisher or, you know, different type of collaborations. Great to, you know, spend some time thinking about identity and focus, finding a path that can really amplify the identity that a studio has. Game quality can come out of many different things, obviously the game itself, but it can come from a prototype, it can come from a game pitch, showing that, you know, as a studio, the focus is really on game quality. And lastly, your DNA, the differentiator in your studio, differentiator on the games that we make, how we approach the design, how we approach the narrative, what's our art style, and how does that make us stand out from other studios and from other games. So then the key question is, how do you find a partner? That's obviously something that's really important to a lot of studios. Of course, there's many ways that we can find partners, and some of it's events like this and reaching out. Other things are things like LinkedIn, but I would definitely caution LinkedIn a little bit. I get a lot of LinkedIn requests, and one thing I would recommend is being very specific. You know, a lot of people reach out and just say, hey, I've got an idea for a League of Legends game. And that's not always the best approach, but I think it's worth being super upfront about, you know, what your unique identity is, or the DNA, and what can be provided, and very specific about the unique offering that perhaps you could give to the publisher. So many people email with the same thing on LinkedIn, which definitely seems to be templatized. So again, think about the way that messages can stand out and really lean into certain identities. So once you've found a partner or a publisher, you definitely want to make the most out of the collaboration. Again, this doesn't apply to all partnerships because there are many different levels of support, and that can change based on, you know, the terms that you have with the partnership or the publisher. It can change based on the relationship that you've built. But the key thing is that you want your publisher to take some of the pressure off, so that you can focus on making a great game. And as with Riot Forge, you know, our focus is to amplify the games that our partners are making with bespoke marketing, trailers, events, really understanding how to gain awareness and ultimately, you know, acquisition from players and get them excited about the game. So the publisher will obviously provide many different supporting functions, and that really depends on the relationship, but it should be two-way and benefit both parties. In a perfect world, the, you know, publisher gets the developer's unique experience and amazing talent, and the developer gets the support that's required to really get the game into the players' hands in the best possible way. So that's just a quick fire summary of some of the things that might help, especially when people are looking for, you know, partnerships or funding or collaborations or publishers. Specifically for Riot Forge and what we are looking for, definitely kind of summarizing everything that I've just kind of chatted about. In our partners, really looking for studios that have a unique identity in some area of their game, something that they've created. Definitely developers that have experience in their genre space. You know, genre kings know exactly what those type of players are looking for and what experience that game should be. And then developers that have released high quality games together as a studio. They've worked together before, they know how to, you know, ship and develop games. And then from a game perspective, Forge is really looking for new ways to imagine League of Legends, focusing on narrative, story-driven games that we can go deep into certain champions and create really bespoke games, handcrafted experience that our players can really go deep in and get immersed into the stories that we're telling. And there's some of the things that we're really looking for on Riot Forge when we are out there looking for our partners and developers to work with. So that is it. I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight and some key takeaways if you're looking for a publisher or partnership. Any questions at all, there's my email. Feel free to reach out. Happy to connect with anyone that has any questions.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Thank you for the presentation and so many advices. Actually, we have a couple of questions from our audience, if you don't mind answering them now.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Well, first of all, a short comment from myself. You know, I'm sitting here in the studio with my colleagues here. And, you know, when you started describing what your interests are, they were like, oh my God, this woman is just amazing. You should have seen their faces. And actually, one of the questions was, which league are you playing for in League of Legends?
Which what, sorry?
Which league?
Oh, I mean, I play Miss Fortune. She's my woman. I love her a lot. Unfortunately, I'm not the most skilled player at League of Legends, so I am a bronzy, but I'm a proud bronzy. So,
Well, they're saying hello, by the way. All right, a few more serious questions.
Yeah.
Well, generally, how did you come up with an idea to expand the League of Legends universe? Isn't it hard to actually give away something that is so dear to your heart? Isn't it
I
scary?
think it's we've been building League of Legends for 10 years and we've gone so deep into areas of the world and different champions. And the games that, the amazing games we make, League of Legends, the MOBA, and our other games, as they're competitive and really focused on multiplayer and online, they're not the best platforms for us to tell stories and to go deep in champions. And we know that we have this very robust universe that we really want to tell some awesome stories in. And so that was kind of the driver is, okay, what type of games can we make that can really show players, really allow players to go deep into the universe and get immersed into these stories? So that was really one of the key drivers.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question, that you mentioned the quality of the game. Well, generally how this is important, but there is actually an opinion that the only criteria that measures it is basically the revenue, the number of copies sold. What do you think about that?
I actually think it's not as black and white as that, to be honest. There are many, many different things that factor into the amount of units that you've sold. You could have a extremely high quality game that unfortunately just doesn't have the marketing push behind it, or just doesn't get awareness from players, doesn't get into players' hands. Just because you end up selling less units doesn't necessarily mean that the game is not quality. So I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think there are many great areas. There are many reasons why games sell millions of copies versus not many copies, and that's not always an indication of quality. Also works the other way around. There's games that have scored very high on Metacritic, for example, and I still think Metacritic's not the perfect way to analyze the quality of a game. There are definitely many data that you should triangulate and not just rely on one source like Metacritic. But there are definitely games that score very high on Metacritic and other areas, and perhaps haven't sold as many copies as you would expect from a game that has rated that highly. So I do think there are many different sort of outcomes that can come from your game, and the focus should be on the quality. And then from a publishing perspective, as mentioned, it's really the publisher's job to make sure that that game gets into players' hands and the awareness is super high so that players can experience that high quality game.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. Well, I probably know the answer already, but what do you think? Should a development studio, should they work on their dream game that they've always thought about, or maybe be more specific, and rely on reality, what's happening now? What do you think?
I mean, I think, again, I think the way that you're going to get the best game is by making something that you're super passionate about. Passion and motivation and desire comes out in the games that we make. And if you're making something just for the sake of making it, then that will show in the game. So I definitely think it's important to be passionate about the thing that you're making. Of course, there are other things that we need to take into account with that decision as well, like actually being financially secure and making money. But if you have the opportunity to create your dream project and it's something that you're extremely passionate about, I would say go for it. And there's obviously strategies that you can put in place to get there as well. Perhaps you decide as a studio that you will work for other publishers or developers, do work for hire for a couple of years so that you can get yourself and your studio into a position where that dream game does become reality. So I think there's different strategies that developers can approach to get to that point. And maybe it's not the first game you make, but maybe that's the long-term strategy.
Okay, thanks very much. We have a question from Williams Infante. Sorry if I pronounce it wrong. If I'm a lonely wolf developer without game portfolio, but with a great original idea, great quality demo with nice art style, will it be possible to catch your attention, or it's like a no go? from the very beginning?
I don't think it's a no-go from the very beginning. I'm always open to speaking to anyone because you never know where you're going to find the next best game. So it's definitely not a no. I think the challenge is, not having a set studio comes with a higher level of risk, and not having made a game before comes with a higher level of risk. It might not be a fit for Riot Forge, but we definitely have other things within Riot that we are open to collaborations and different form of support. So I wouldn't say it's a no, it's definitely still worth having a conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. And one more question from our audience, from Guillaume Mozart. With Bona, they're developing a unique collectible board game, and wondering if Riot Forge is expanding League of Legends universe with such a format.
I mean, we are open to many different types of experiences and genres. We have a variety of different games in development right now. So for Riot Forge specifically, we are very much focused on the sort of bespoke, story-driven experience. But we're definitely open to lots of different genres and experiences.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you here in the studio with us. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and hope to see you soon at one of the offline shows as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.